What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing another video. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is almost here, so doing a little bit of a pre-game launch Q&A. I tweeted out a couple videos ago, asked for some questions. I got them, so we're gonna read through them. It's also the last time you're probably gonna see this beard for a while. I'm shaving it out. I'm going as David Martinez from Cyberpunk Edge Runners for Halloween, so I gotta kind of like get rid of this. Enough of that. Let's dive in. All right, so basically going to just kind of rapid fire these. I have a decent amount of questions, so we're just going to kind of run through these. We got a mix of YouTube and Twitter questions. So the first one is from Pandemonium Clips, and they ask, from the beta maps, which you think can work for CDL, if any? So I think the three maps that might be kind of playable are Hotel, Form Team, and Mercado. I think Hotel is pretty good. Out of the box, Hardpoint 4v4 seems like it should be a pretty solid map. I think we'll definitely give that a run and see if it fits. Obviously, we'll check out, S&D modes for that. That was a playable S&D in the beta, so it was but I'm curious again once you get a real 4v4 playtest with it if it actually plays out like a good S&D map. Mercado's an interesting one. It's pretty small, so for like Hardpoint, I don't know necessarily if it's going to work. It might be a little bit like too chaotic, so I'm not saying no right now. It's maybe like a slight no. Again, let's see 4v4 team scrim it, like how it kind of plays. If it's not the right size, then we might have to move on from that. Farm 18's an interesting one. It's got a lot of weird kind of edges of the map that are like pretty deep in the spawn areas, especially around where like the second and third hard points are. So there might be kind of this funky sort of Miami S&D kind of issue where there's a lot of like useless parts of the map. I think this is a possible respawn map, maybe an S&D map as well. I'm a little worried also about the middle of the map. It's kind of like chaos and a lot of timings. They'll probably give this a try, but we'll see kind of if it sticks. I'm pretty 50-50 on it. All right, next up we have TBA Matrix on Twitter, and they ask, what do you think about Major 1 including challengers teams? For me, I like it. I really think that these sort of pro-am competitions need to be constantly included within the CDL ecosystem. We had our first one last year with the Pro-Am Classic, and I think this year Major 1's sort of a better iteration on that format. Personally, I'd love to see like one in the beginning of the season and one in the middle of the season. And then some kind of off-season sort of old school COD Champs event maybe with the large prize pool would be kind of cool. But a minimum one or two of these I think would be really good. So I would say it's a massive W for me. Next up, we have Piscaro DB, and he asks, with the new iteration of the Gunsmith, will there be more variety of what players use based on map mode, etc., or will it be another year of a two-gun meta with the only differences being minor things like scopes? That's a great question. I think it's really kind of hard to answer because we don't know what the meta is like on the game release. We've always seen this with betas. Like, we play it, we know what guns are good in the beta, and then the game launches and it's totally different. Things have completely changed, so it's impossible to answer this question. I will say though, historically, like, we've never really expanded past like a maybe 3 or 4 gun meta. I mean, Black Ops 3 might be the widest example, but that was really due to ban and protect and a bunch of other stuff. So listen, I think that it's more likely we get closer to a 2-gun meta. I'd love to see like sub, maybe send it to a little bit more in between, a really good long range AR. We'll obviously have snipers probably in the mix unless they're super broken. You got pistols, but impossible to really answer at this point. I think we should revisit this question probably a week or two after launch and see where the weapons are kind of sitting post any like real title update. Next up, Amro Ruler on Twitter asks, Vanguard was a bad game, but it was fun to watch. Do you think MW2 will be the opposite? You're saying like fun to play and bad to watch? I don't think that's how that works. Now, you're not wrong. I don't think mechanically Vanguard was like the greatest game on planet Earth. But I will say like CDL was pretty lit last year. A lot of close series. The events are really awesome. Look, like if we get a good game with good maps, it's going to be fun to watch. So I don't think we're getting the opposite. I don't, you know what I mean? I think if anything, it's either going to be good and we're going to have a good time watching it, or it'll be mid and, it'll be good or bad. I think those are really your branches of the tree there. All right, next up, we got a YouTube question from the Leiru. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Ben, what is the reason that most GAs that could be implemented into the CDL rule set won't be? A little bit of some interesting punctuation there. But then, for example, in VG's rank play, some of the GAs were implemented. I think it makes no sense and it's just a bad thing for CDL if the players don't even know the rules pros are using or can't fully mimic pros rules in rank play. So I have talked about this issue for a long time. Like, I will tell y'all, like, I have sort of been behind the scenes like talking about this, I think, since World War II, which is right now there's this sort of weird massive disconnect into what actually goes into the CDL rule set. And I think the best way to solve all problems, including CDL rule set, GB, UMG, CMG rule set, and then what you actually see in ranked play in the game, like there needs to be a real committee of people that decides this. A committee that can meet quickly to temporarily restrict items that are broken, talk about once items are fixed, should they be added back in, take away the whole GA chat process and all the other sort of middleman stuff, and get right to the heart of actually solving the issue. I think that would fix the problem. The reason that it's like this right now is just, as I said, like, it's just an absolute mess of just different people having different conversations and stuff that's not going to get rolled out at the same time. So we need some unification. I think that'd be much better for the scene. All right, next up, we have Vinay on Twitter, and he asked, do you know anything about what streaming platform we're going to be watching CDL on next year? Everyone keeps asking me this question in my chat. Tommy keeps trying to get the answer from me on the show. Dug around. I think the answer is there's no decision yet. I don't expect really us to get any sort of advance on this till probably after Thanksgiving, if I'm honest. It's a pretty big decision for the league and Activision on this front. There's pros and cons to YouTube and Twitch, and you got to think it's also less about viewership sometimes, and you know, YouTube probably offered them a significant amount of money last go around to take that deal. So it's a real difficult decision for them. And I don't think we're really going to get a heads up until later in the month. And as far as I've heard, no decision's been made yet. All right, next up, we got Matt, aka Matter ZX on Twitter asking, should the CDL push content creation more on team/players to boost overall interest/viewers of the CDL, or just allow them to focus on competing? So on the player side, look, I think there are a lot of players that do a lot of content creation by themselves without doing sort of content day, sort of org-related stuff. But I think trying to push those guys to always be sort of dual, triple threat kind of type of individuals, not everyone's going to be wanting to create content. Some people just want to compete. I think on the team side though, you know, yes, I think you've seen teams starting to do a better job with content on YouTube, on Twitter, and some of that includes players. Some of that includes other content creators that are signed to these organizations. I think in general, look, more content, more engagement, especially if we got launch coming up, maximizing and bringing new people in the audience is key. So I think also as well, as you're going to see next week with launch tournaments, like getting those CDL players involved with live content creation around those tournaments is also super important. Switching over to YouTube, we got a comment from Nestor Hernandez. S&D will probably last less than usual this time, right? First CDL match December 3rd and Pro-Am after. It's not like other years. So basically what Nestor is asking is, last year, like the S&D scene kind of died pretty quick, and this was due to a number of factors: hackers on PC, a couple of glitches in terms of sort of how S&D was played. The S&D scene is not like it was back in the Ghost and AW days. I also think the other problem here too is Warzone, and those players that were normal S&D stars moving off and being Warzone content creators. The Warzone scene's kind of a little bit mixed right now. Everybody's waiting for Warzone 2. We have like a 2 or 3 week window after launch, and then Warzone 2 will be released. So I don't know how long the S&D scene will last, and it might be on like Tupac and the boys to really keep it going. So not a great answer to your question in terms of like anything optimistic. I think we'll see what happens by like mid-November if people are still really grinding nightly S&D tournaments. G Skittle on Twitter asks, what would you do to take advantage of potential CDL Warzone 2 crossover, since there'll be a fresh reset and everything is on the same engine, to allow a more fluent process for both sides trying the other? So two things. I think the first thing is continuing to run these sort of competitive adjacent Warzone tournaments that either enact with the CDL brand like we've seen with Resurgence, or like World Series of Warzone events that include CDL persons. Those are really good. You get people together, big prize pool, creating content around that. Like that's a really key thing. I think the second thing too, and this is, you know, on like people like Biffle and Zuma, is like keep that sort of content creation going between those two sort of content groups, whether they're playing multiplayer together, Warzone, 1v1ing, like that stuff is really awesome. Keeping those communities connected are key. And then people start watching other people's content. Like those are, I think, the two ways to do it, both from an official standpoint as well as from a grassroots standpoint. All right, Coach Tricks with an interesting question on Twitter. What are the cons of bringing back the pick and ban system from Black Ops 3? It's been a burning question of mine since the last couple of games, and no one really explaining why it's been left behind. So he's talking about ban and protect. So if you've ever watched Black Ops 3, basically before every map, teams would have this sort of rapid fire thing where they could ban or protect items, perks, abilities, etc. And it was a really interesting dynamic. You had a lot of different ways people would go about it. Like one example was when I was working with FaZe, when we played certain teams, we got fast hands out of there. People that we knew like really couldn't keep up with our speed. You saw people like Killa, like towards the end of the year, would just get rid of like all the main meta guns to force people to play like weird subs and ARs. It was really cool. I think the big issue with ban and protect was sort of the rapid fire thing. I would rather it be sort of more of a kind of standardized veto process that isn't like who can mash the button the quickest. To answer why it hasn't been in, like, I don't know. I really liked Ban and Protect, and I'd love to see like some iteration of it come back or be discussed about coming back. But I guess it's just sort of a design decision from some of these publishers and studios, keeping in mind that it was only really like relevant for the competitive side in Black Ops 3. It had no real use the average player of Black Ops 3 outside of, you know, ranked play and stuff like that. Brian Mitchell on YouTube asks, is it possible for pros to play CTF as a third game mode if they find something they don't like control in the new game? Absolutely. As is always with the third game mode and map set, like it is a collaborative conversation that occurs if they've got to make tweaks or figure out things. So yes, if they load in and control is not good and CTF is playable, they will quickly pivot. I don't see any issue with that. We'll have to see though if that actually happens in practice. My guess is we'll probably still stick with control. It's Flashy asks on Twitter, who do you think will be the first team to make changes and when? So the and when part is easy. I would be thoroughly shocked if anyone makes a change before December 3rd. It would be a crazy circumstance of either someone's got a visa issue, health issue, or like there's just some weird team disconnect. I think more likely is you're going to see changes during the holiday period after Major 1. As far as the first team to make a change, my money is on LA Gorillas. I think they are running it back with the trio from last year, and I don't think that they are going to give the Hook, Neptune, Spark trio like a long leash. So if I had to bank on a team to make a change quickly, I think it's going to be that one. But is Boston going to bring Beans in sort of in the beginning of the season? Does Optic have a long leash, or will they make a change if they don't get like a really good top 4 placing? I just think of all of those squads, I think they're the one that is the most likely. And people might say, well, what about Vegas? I just really, though, with Vegas, like if they do want to make a change, there aren't going to be like a premier destination for people coming in. They've struggled with this like over the last couple of years. When they want to make a change, they get turned down like by people. So I would say LAG if I had to put some money on it. The last question here from the Bearded ODSC. Why do you think the league hasn't agreed to expansion so far? Heading into the fourth CDL season with still 12 teams doesn't seem right, especially with how well HES is done with open bracket play. Well, okay, so two parts to this question. HES, completely different ecosystem, more of a partner ecosystem. There's not a franchise buy-in. And even then, there's a lot of like partner behind the scenes drama sort of going on there. So it's not all right with the world of Halo. They just had a really good champs, but I do think the first season of HCS in this game definitely had its issues as well that they're going to revise going to year 2. As far as expansion, I think there are two kind of main drivers as to why we haven't seen it. One is COVID hit, and I think really threw in wrench a lot of the expansion plans that they may have had. Keeping in mind, by the way, only a certain amount of group of people can really qualify, get through the due diligence, and get approved to get a franchise spot. We're talking about real old money, new money. You've got to have like 9 figures in the bank type of people or financing. So it's not a large subset of people. And I think just in general, if you look at sort of the esports kind of venture capital sort of landscape, it has tightened a little bit. And on top of that, right now, the economic conditions are not indicative of some massive boom market. We may actually potentially be heading into a recession. So I think all of those economic factors are probably the biggest one. Although we have seen people like Adam Adamu, who is a co-owner of the Toronto Ultra team, say they really want to push for expansion next season. So we'll see. It's just about finding partners that are going to be willing to kind of pony up the cash and the commitments that the league wants. I think there are definitely some parties out there. I would say if we want to get to 16 teams, for me, that would be sort of the best mark to get to. But let's see if they can figure out how to get 4 new organizations into the league. And that's going to do it for this video. A fun Q&A. I think I'm going to do these every couple of weeks, so be on the lookout for more. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments to some of my answers. If you have some more questions, I'll follow up and respond accordingly. Obviously, we have launch coming up tonight. I will probably be live around midnight for a few hours, and then I'm going to go live in the morning for a super long stream, starting that camel grind, starting that pub grind. We'll watch some tournaments as they unfold. So I'm super excited for all of the launch activity this weekend. As always, if you enjoy the content, smash that like button, subscribe. We keep pumping out content for you, so I hope you all enjoy it. And as always, guys, I'll see you on the next one.